What if Anne Frank survived the Holocaust? This is a question I wonder a lot as an amateur World War II historian and someone who has read Anne's diary and seen all the movies based on her life. Let's imagine a scenario. Picture Bergen-Belsen death camp in 1945. 15-year-old Anne Frank is barely clean alive due to typhus. Her older sister Margaret Frank had just died from the same illness. In our timeline, she perishes. But in this imagined timeline, British forces win the sudden victory against the German forces in Bergen-Belsen's local area in what would be called the Easy February by military historians. British forces arrive at Bergen-Belsen camp, which had been long abandoned by German forces. All that is left is volunteers and few conscripts with many prisoners. Some of the later arriving prisoners, who were still somewhat healthy, had armed themselves with guns that the Schutzstaffel or SS had left behind on the retreat from the camp. A British Army doctor comes across Anne Frank and other typhus-ridden soon-to-be survivors. He instructs his nurse to bring his bag to him, and she waits coming back with the doctor's bag. The doctor readies a shot of powerful antibiotics, injecting it into Anne's arm, stabilizing her from near death and allowing her to be medically transported. A British Army ambulance transported to a field hospital where further care was given. She soon recovers within weeks, and with the help of a Dutch translator, due to her English being rusty, she manages to get some information and seek a ride to Amsterdam from a humanitarian vehicle heading that way. She arrives in Amsterdam shortly later, where she starts looking for her father. Due to her father being at Auschwitz, she has to wait some time until he himself is liberated from the Germans by the Soviet Union. Going back to her old business her father owned, one of the helpers that helped the Frank family when they were hiding is conducting business, since Otto Frank, is gone at the moment. She sees Anne approach and comes to get her, allowing her to take shelter until her father would return. May 1945, as Germany surrenders, Otto Frank heads west to Amsterdam and reads a bulletin board list of missing and others who are not able to be found now that the war is over. He looks forward, penning his own message to the board where he is looking for his two daughters, Anne and Margaret, and his wife. He assumes that all the family is dead. Heading back to his old company building, he stumbles in the door only for his daughter, Anne, to be sitting on the couch. Excited and relieved to see one of his daughters, he grabs her and hugs her, holding her tightly. Anne informs Otto that Margaret is dead. They both cry, and transformed by what she has seen in the death camp, begins to develop what we would later know as post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. She would begin to be terrified of the house quaking at night, or when seeing men in uniforms. Troubled by what she is going through, she attempts to write in her diary and sees it helps somewhat but not very much. She finishes her diary in 1946 and submits it to the Dutch government, as they had requested memoirs of the war for publishing. Her story is published as Memoirs of Anne Frank, Surviving the Holocaust in hiding, and her book gets some traction, unfortunately due to the story not being that tragic as our timelines. No movie deals were formed at first. She continues to keep faith, promoting her book, even going to London, as she had promised to do one day for sister Margaret. There she meets a famous woman director named Mary Allison, who is enamored with her book. She decides to turn the book into the movie, with Anne Frank playing herself. Anne soon learns how to act and becomes a trained actress under the guidance of Mary. Meanwhile, she continues to suffer from PTSD. Crew working on her movie could hear Anne crying in the background. The director keeps working with Anne despite hardships on Anne's side, helping her play herself in the movie. The movie is finished being directed and released in 1950, while the Korean War is booming in Korea. It is a beautiful movie, and with the boom of the Cold War, people tune in to Anne Frank's first movie to escape the war in Korea. They write the young Dutch actress and writer. They compliment her acting style, seen as her as genuine. The movie on her memoir gets widespread attention, even having the President of the United States view it in the White House's theater. She continues to write up the movie world for a stunning memoir film. Years pass by, and it is 1964. Anne Frank is now 44. She travels to Los Angeles to see a second movie based on her life being filmed. She is not acting in this one, but during her time in the States, she experiences, not encounters, a very bad post-traumatic stress disorder episode and is admitted into a hospital. American doctors who are at the forefront of mental health research told Anne that she was suffering from gross stress reaction, or what would later be called PTSD in our time. They prescribed her Valium, a new medicine that had been introduced a year before. It belongs to a new type of medicine called benzodiazepines. They work to reduce anxiety. Anne experiences some relief from the symptoms, but not all of them, when she begins the medication. The doctor recommends that Anne also start attending therapy. She attends her first therapy session while stateside, and the therapist helps her understand her feelings, helping her feel calm and normal, and most importantly bring the PTSD episodes under control. The travels to Europe after filming for a movie concludes. She says that it's hard to get her medication continued in Europe, as the European doctors view PTSD to only affect soldiers and not civilians. Anne uses her star power to begin speaking on mental health even though it was taboo in the 1960s. She gets a spot on Dutch radio and begins hosting a radio program where she speaks about the mental health and how to recover from the incident, inviting her Holocaust survivors like herself to talk about their experiences. She also has progressive doctors come onto the show and briefly talk about their progressing treatments for PTSD. Her radio program, The Unseen Scars, quickly gains a dedicated following across the Netherlands and eventually syndication in Belgium and West Germany, and becomes a beacon of hope and a symbol for mental resilience. Her raw honesty about her struggles with PTSD breaks down the raw silence surrounding civilian trauma in the post-war era. She champions the idea that the wounds of the mind are just as well as physical ones. By the late 1960s, Anne's fame transforms from that of a survivor and actress into a globally recognized mental health advocate. She leverages her platform to lobby European governments for increased funding for psychiatric research and accessible therapy for all civilians, not just veterans. In 1968, she addresses the newly formed European Parliament on the issue, giving a moving speech that draws on her personal trauma and experience in the concentration camp. Meanwhile, her personal life continues. In 1967, she marries a Dutch architect, John van den Miel, who she meets through her advocacy work. He is a steadfast and supportive partner, understanding her ongoing struggles. We welcome a daughter in 1970 who they named Margaret in honor of Anne's right sister. Anne's experience as a mother was complicated by trauma, moments of anxiety and fear are ever present, yet the joy of raising her daughter becomes a new source of triumph. In 1975, on the 40th anniversary of the war's end, Anne publishes a second book, The Unseen Scars, My Journey of Trauma. Unlike her memoir, this book is a deep dive into a psychological toll of genocide and a practical guide for managing PTSD, drawn heavily on her therapeutic insights and her journey of medication. It becomes a non-fiction bestseller, translated into dozens of languages, and solidifies her place as a pioneer in mental health awareness. This book is instrumental in shifting the public and mental health perception of trauma, and the medical perception as well, particularly in Europe. As the 1980s arrive, Anne Frank is now in her 50s, continuing her work, at a slightly slower pace due to her age. She establishes the Anne Frank Foundation for Mental Health, which funds scholarships for trauma specialists and provides pro bono therapy for survivors of global conflict. She travels west before to dedicate her time to writing and advising. Her diary, Memoirs of Anne Frank Surviving the Holocaust in Hiding, which had initially only initially achieved only modest success in the 1940s, finds a renewed powerful audience through the wins of a Weddle wife and advocacy. It is now read not only as a historical artifact of the Holocaust, but as a foundational document of a wife dedicated to healing. Anne Frank would pass away in 2007, having lived a long and very fruitful life. But yeah, that's basically the short story that I wrote about Anne's life if she survived the Holocaust. I hope you guys liked it, and if you guys would like to see more of that type of content, let me know, because I'm trying to make more of this content. I'm probably next, I'll probably do John F. Kennedy if he survived his assassination attempt, like he got wounded or something instead of being killed. And I'll probably will talk about trying to think of who else would be pretty good. That's something I'm gonna think about. Maybe make a poll or something. We'll see. But thanks for listening and have a great day.